I didn't expect to find it. Not in that box. Not after all these years. I was just supposed to be helping Mom clean out the house. She's finally selling it, the place I grew up in, the house with the blue shutters and the creaky hallway that still smells like lemon pledge and the burnt crust of frozen pizza. She'd done most of the heavy lifting already. The closets were bare, the family photos boxed up. She even donated Dad's coats, the ones that used to hang like sleeping giants in the front hall. But the attic, she hadn't touched that. Said it was probably just junk. I don't know what I was expecting when I pulled the ladder down. That smell hit me immediately. Old dust, cardboard, the faint sting of insulation. And silence. Like the attic had been waiting for me. There were boxes. Dozens of them. Stuffed animals, old VHS tapes, Halloween costumes, school projects I barely remembered doing. And then I saw it, wedged between a cracked karaoke machine and a bin of Beanie Babies. My diary. Lisa Frank dolphins, glittery pink hearts, a little lock shaped like a star. I thought I lost it years ago. I remember crying about it once, convinced it had fallen into a parallel dimension. I opened the latch without even thinking. Turns out kid me wasn't that great at hiding things. Page 1. Pink gel pen. Swirly handwriting. Dear Diary. Today Daddy laughed so hard he cried. I never saw him cry again. That sentence hit me like a freight train. I don't remember writing it, but I remember the day. We were in the backyard. It was summer. Uncle Ray burned the hot dogs, and Dad laughed until his shoulders shook, until tears ran down his face, and he had to sit down. It was a loud, beautiful laugh, the kind that made you feel safe just hearing it. I don't think I ever saw him laugh like that again. I always told people I had a good childhood. Still do. I've said it in job interviews, on awkward dates, to therapists. Yeah, we were normal. Middle class. Quiet neighborhood. Good parents. But that line, I never saw him cry again, it made something inside me shift. Like a drawer sliding open in a part of my brain I'd kept nailed shut. I kept reading. Daddy painted my toenails today. He did a bad job, but I told him it was pretty anyway. I think Daddy was sad today, but he said he was just tired. Mommy says Daddy's working more so we can go to Disney. I told her I don't care about Mickey Mouse, I just want dinner with Daddy. The entries got shorter. The color faded. The stickers stopped showing up. The pink pen turned to pencil. The handwriting changed, smaller, shakier. There was a kind of shrinking in the words, like the girl writing them was getting quieter, even if her body was still growing. I hadn't remembered most of it, and I don't mean I forgot. I mean I sealed it away. Like part of me knew it was too much to carry into adulthood. But this little girl, she remembered everything, and she wrote it all down. Then she left it up there, in the attic, hoping someone would find it when they were strong enough. I'm 27 now. I pay rent, drive to work, recycle. I tell people I'm fine. But reading that diary made me realize I never unpacked what it meant to lose someone who was still alive. My father didn't die. He just changed, quietly, slowly, until one day I looked up and realized the man I remembered had been replaced by someone colder, heavier, distant in a way I didn't have language for at the time. He used to dance with me in the living room, sing show tunes off-key while washing dishes, let me stand on his feet while he twirled me. He used to wake me up on Saturday mornings with chocolate chip pancakes and jokes that barely made sense but made me laugh anyway. Then something shifted. He stopped coming to the dinner table, started spending more time in the garage. His face got still, his voice got flatter. When he did talk, it was clipped, efficient, hollow. I thought he was just tired. Or stressed. Or maybe I just thought that's what being a grown-up looked like. But I was 9, and even then, I could feel it. Something had drained out of him, and the rest of us were supposed to pretend it wasn't happening. I turned to the middle of the diary. My handwriting was sharper now, like I was trying harder to write clearly. I think Daddy is disappearing. That's what I wrote. Not Dad is mad. Not Dad is sick. Just disappearing. Like he was being erased slowly, one molecule at a time. And I was watching it happen from my place at the dinner table, swinging my legs, asking him if he wanted more peace. I closed the diary, sat with it pressed against my chest. The attic was darker than when I came up. Maybe a cloud had passed, or maybe it was just the weight of what I'd found. All this time I thought I remembered my childhood. But I didn't remember the truth. I remembered the version I needed to survive. And now? Now, I'm starting to remember for real. And I don't know if I'm ready for what comes next. The thing about memory is, it's not static. It's not some dusty photograph that waits patiently in a shoebox. It grows and mutates and sometimes lies to you to keep you safe. That's what I realized as I kept reading. The next diary entry was from July 1999. I would have been about 8. Daddy smashed the TV today. Mommy screamed. He said it was broken and we don't need it anyway. Then we had pancakes for dinner. It was kind of funny. That last line got me. It was kind of funny. I remember telling that story at sleepovers like it was a quirky family anecdote. Remember when Dad lost it and took the TV out back and just destroyed it? Like Hulk style? It was so random. But now, reading it again in my own shaky 8-year-old handwriting, it didn't sound funny anymore. I could see it clearly. The television, a bulky box with a wood frame and big silver knobs, sitting in the driveway. I remember the heat of that day. I remember how red his face was. Not sunburned. Just so red. Angry. Swollen with something he wouldn't say out loud. I remember standing in the window, watching him lift a crowbar from the garage wall and bring it down again and again until the screen cracked, then shattered. The sound stayed in my ears long after it was over. Not just the glass, but the silence afterward. Like even the birds didn't want to comment on what they'd just seen. He said it was broken. Said he was sick of all the noise. That we needed to stop rotting our brains. But I knew it wasn't about the television. Mom tried to patch it over the way she always did. She made pancakes and let me put chocolate chips in mine, even though we usually saved those for special days. She told me Daddy was just frustrated. That he didn't mean to scare me. I don't remember being scared. That's what's strange. I don't remember fear. I remember confusion. Watching someone you love do something that doesn't make sense and deciding to rewrite the narrative so you can still love them. So I laughed. I told myself it was funny. That Daddy was just being weird again. And eventually, we got a new TV. A smaller one. It sat in the corner of the living room, and nobody talked about the old one anymore. But I think something changed that day. Something irreversible. After that, he started spending more time alone. In the garage, mostly. Or outside on the porch with a beer, staring at the dark like it owed him something. He stopped coming to movie night. Stopped making pancakes. Stopped asking about my day. It wasn't like a door slamming shut. It was like a slow, creaking drift into another room. And we just let him go. I remember watching him once, sitting in the garage with the light off, just smoking and staring at the cement floor. His hands were folded. Still. Like he was praying. Or bracing for something. I asked him if he wanted to come inside. He said no without looking at me. So I went back inside. Ate my dinner. Laughed at cartoons. Didn't mention it. That's what we did. We learned to live around the silence. Like it was furniture. As I kept flipping through the diary, I found a page I'd glued shut. I must have done it with school glue, clumsily, thinking it would seal something in forever. But time had weakened it, and the corners peeled up easily. Inside was a single line. Mommy cried in the kitchen. I think she thinks I didn't see. But I did. That one undid me. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. I wasn't just watching my father disappear. I was watching my mother try to hold it all together. Pretending her husband hadn't gone somewhere unreachable. Smiling with tight lips. Cooking meals he wouldn't eat. Explaining away every outburst, every silence, every broken thing. And I helped. I nodded along. I laughed at the right moments. I made it easier for her to keep pretending. because I was too young to know any better. I wanted him back. I wanted the man who used to make me sing along to the Beatles in the car. The man who used to tickle me until I couldn't breathe. The man who told me my laugh was his favorite sound in the world. But he was gone. And in his place was this shadow. Heavy and quiet and unreachable. We never talked about it. Not once. Not then. Not after. Not now. And maybe that's why I'm here. Sitting in my old bedroom, diary in my lap, trying to find language for something I never had words for. I don't know when my father started to fall. I don't know what cracked first. Was it work? His health? Something in his mind? Or was it always there, hiding beneath the surface, waiting for a moment to break through? I wish I had the courage to ask him. I wish I could knock on his door, sit across from him at that scratched kitchen table, and say, "Do you remember the summer you drowned the TV?" But I won't. Not yet. Because I'm afraid of what he'll say. I'm more afraid of what he won't. I used to love dinner time. It wasn't anything fancy, meatloaf, spaghetti, maybe takeout if Mom was too tired. But it was ritual. It was us. Plates clinking. Dad asking about school. Me pretending to hate vegetables and sneaking green beans to the dog. Mom humming while she poured milk. There was something sacred about the way we all sat at the table, together. Even when I didn't have the words for it, I felt safe there. Rooted. And then one day, he didn't come to dinner. I don't remember why. Maybe he was still at work. Maybe he was in the garage again. Maybe we didn't ask. But it was just me and Mom, sitting at opposite ends of the table, pretending that silence wasn't sitting in his chair. I kept eating. She kept smiling. And then it became normal. One night turned into 2. Then 4. Then every night. Dad started eating later, or not at all. Mom said he was tired. Said he had a lot on his mind. But the truth is, he just stopped showing up. There's a diary entry, September, maybe 2000. Daddy didn't eat with us again. I asked if he was mad. Mom said no, just busy. I left him a cookie on the counter. He didn't eat it. It's such a small thing. A missing plate. An untouched cookie. But looking back, I think that's when I started to understand something was wrong. Because it wasn't just about food. He stopped speaking to us the way he used to. Stopped teasing me about my messy ponytail or asking if I was still friends with that girl from art class. He stopped picking up the mail or answering the phone. Even his footsteps changed, slower, heavier, like he was dragging something invisible. And Mom? She shifted too. Started eating faster. Talking more. Filling every silence like it was her job to patch the cracks. She'd ask questions with too much brightness in her voice. How was school? Did you finish your book report? You want me to braid your hair tonight? She was afraid of the quiet. Because the quiet meant he wasn't coming back to the table. It was like we were living with a stranger. Or maybe not even that. A shadow. A presence that used to be a person. And we were supposed to pretend it was normal. There's another diary entry that gutted me. Mom told me not to bother Daddy. She said he needs space. But I miss him. Even when he's right there. Even when he's right there. I think that's the cruelest kind of absence. When someone is in the room with you, breathing the same air, but they might as well be 1,000 miles away. Because they won't look at you. Won't speak to you. Won't reach across the space between you and say, "I'm still here." I started to feel like I was doing something wrong. Like maybe I was too loud. Too needy. Too much. Maybe if I did better in school. Maybe if I kept my room clean. Maybe if I stopped crying when he didn't say goodnight. I remember once, sitting at the dinner table with Mom, staring at the empty chair across from me. I folded my napkin into a triangle. Then a square. Then a triangle again. Over and over like it was going to summon him back. He never came in. He just sat in the garage, door cracked open, letting the cold spill in like smoke. And Mom kept eating. And I kept pretending I didn't care. We were learning how to live without him. While he was still alive. Years later, people would ask me why I don't believe in family dinners. Why I eat on the couch. Why I hate long tables. And I'd laugh. say something about being a millennial, blame it on convenience. But the truth is, I don't trust tables anymore. They start out warm, full, familiar. And then one day someone's missing. And no one talks about why. And the food doesn't taste the same after that. The memory came back, so suddenly I thought it was a dream at first. Or something I'd seen in a movie. But it was real. It was a Tuesday. I remember because we had music class that morning, and I brought home a recorder in my backpack, the plastic kind with the squeaky high notes. I wanted to show him the song I learned. Hot cross buns, 3 notes. A child's first sense of melody. The school bus stopped at the corner. I stepped off, clutching my backpack to my chest, already picturing him standing at the end of the driveway, arms crossed, that familiar smirk waiting for me. He used to do that. Wait for me. Every day. But this time, he wasn't standing. He was sitting in the car. The engine was off. Windows up. Hands at 10 and 2 like he was waiting for the light to change. Only it wasn't running. And there was no red light. Just him. Still. Silent. Eyes forward. I didn't know what to do. I waved. He didn't move. So I walked slower. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he didn't see me. But even as I stepped onto the gravel, close enough to see the outline of his face through the windshield, he didn't flinch. Not a blink. Not a turn of the head. He looked like someone who'd forgotten what he was supposed to do next. I stood there for a few seconds, waiting, like a question with no answer. Then I walked past him, up the steps, into the house. I closed the door quietly. Didn't say a word to Mom. Didn't mention it at dinner. Because something inside me already knew, whatever was happening, we didn't talk about it. I found the diary entry from that night. Daddy sat in the car for a long time. He looked like a statue. I waved and he didn't wave back. I think he forgot who I am. Reading that line made my throat close. I didn't remember writing it. I barely remembered the day. But that feeling, I know it now. That desperate, bottomless ache of being invisible to someone you love. I don't think he forgot me. Not really. I think he was just lost. Not the kind of lost you fix with a GPS or a map. The kind where something inside you stops working and you can't remember how to be a person anymore. As a kid, I didn't have words for it. I just knew something was wrong. Deep wrong. Like when a toy breaks, and no matter how many times you twist it, it doesn't make the sound it used to. That car sat in the driveway for hours that day. I watched it from my bedroom window. The sky turned orange, then gray. Streetlights flickered on. Still, he sat. Eventually, Mom went outside. I couldn't hear what she said. She leaned in the window. Her arms moved a little, gesturing gently. I watched her head tilt the way it always did when she was trying to be kind to someone who was hurting. A few minutes later, he got out and went inside. She followed. I stayed in my room. And that's how it went. He'd vanish into himself, and she'd bring him back. Over and over. Like a tide she couldn't stop, but kept trying to carry home anyway. I started keeping count. Not in the diary. Just in my head. How many times I waved without a wave back. How many dinners went cold while he sat in that car. How many evenings passed without hearing his voice. And what scared me most wasn't that he was pulling away. It was how good we all got at living with it. How normal the silence became. There's a line people say, he was never the same after that. But I couldn't tell you what that was. There was no explosion. No crisis. Just erosion. Like water against stone, wearing him down one layer at a time. I used to think grief was loud. Violent. But it's not always. Sometimes, it's a quiet man in a parked car, staring at nothing, while his daughter waves from the curb, waiting for a wave that never comes. We always did Christmas big in our house. Or, at least, we used to. Tinsel on the staircase. Paper snowflakes in the windows. The tree would go up the day after Thanksgiving, like clockwork, and I was allowed to put the angel on top, even though I had to stand on the wobbly kitchen stool to reach it. Dad used to hum carols while he wrapped presents. He was terrible at wrapping, his edges never lined up, and he used duct tape more than scotch, but he made a game out of it. He'd write fake names on the tags. To Princess Gigglepuff. From the Department of Socks. One year, he gave Mom a plunger wrapped in a Victoria's Secret bag. She laughed so hard she cried. And he laughed with her. That full-bellied, contagious laugh that made me feel like everything in the world was exactly where it was supposed to be. But that was before. I remember the Christmas when everything started to feel off. The tree went up late. The lights didn't work. Dad stayed in the garage most of the day. When he came inside, he was quiet, distant, like a guest in his own house. Mom tried to pull him in, tried to joke, tried to act like nothing was wrong, but he barely smiled. He said he had a headache. He said the music was too loud. He said he needed to lie down. I didn't understand. I was a kid. I only knew that something was missing, and it wasn't under the tree. That night, I wrote a letter to Santa. Not one I ever sent. I didn't leave it by the cookies or ask Mom to mail it to the North Pole. I folded it into a tiny square and slipped it into my diary like a secret wish I was too afraid to speak out loud. I found that letter last night. It was still there, tucked between the pages of an entry that just said, "Mom cried in the laundry room again." I think she misses the old dad too. The letter was in pencil and the words were crooked, like I was rushing. Dear Santa, I don't want toys this year. I just want Daddy to smile again. Not the little smile. The big one. The one he used to do with his eyes. That's all it said. I must have been 8 or 9. Old enough to feel it. Too young to name it. Reading that letter as an adult made something inside me go still. Because now I understand what was happening. Now I know the word for it. Depression. The big, hollow kind that doesn't always scream. It just seeps into everything. Quiet. Heavy. Cold. But back then, all I knew was that my father was drifting further away from me each day, and no one could or would say why. So I asked Santa. Because he brought miracles. Because he made wishes come true. Because maybe if I asked nicely enough, I could get my dad back. I never showed that letter to anyone. Not because I didn't believe, but because some part of me knew, even then, that this wasn't the kind of gift Santa could deliver. What breaks me now is realizing how many times that little girl asked for the impossible and never got an answer. How many mornings she woke up hoping for magic and got silence instead. I think children carry things we don't even see. They fold up their pain into drawings and bedtime songs and secret letters because they don't want to make the grown-ups sadder than they already are. And sometimes they tuck it into diaries. And forget. Until 20 years later, they find the folded paper. And remember. And understand. And cry. Not just for their father, but for the child who kept loving him anyway. There are entries I wrote that don't make any sense now. Sentences that stop halfway. Words scratched out so hard the page tore beneath them. Drawings, just little doodles, really, of sad faces with no mouths or hearts with cracks, or a house with smoke coming from the windows even though nothing was on fire. I was trying to say something, but I didn't have the vocabulary for grief yet, or for mental illness, or the strange, suffocating loneliness that comes from watching someone you love become someone else. I only knew that my father was disappearing and nobody wanted to talk about it. So I drew. I scribbled. I buried it, and now I'm reading it all again. There's one page I must have written during winter break. It starts with a single sentence. I'm hiding in the laundry basket. And then nothing. No follow-up. No explanation. Just that. I didn't remember it at first. But the more I stared at those words, the more the image came back to me being 9 years old, curled up in the plastic laundry bin behind the dryer, knees tucked to my chest, trying not to breathe too loud. There had been shouting. Not a fight. Not exactly. Just sharp words. Cupboards slamming. Heavy steps. The sound of the front door opening and closing too fast. And silence. That awful, crushing silence afterward. I hid. Not because I was afraid of him hurting me. He never laid a hand on me. Not once. But I was afraid of the sadness in him. The blankness. Like if I looked at him too long, it might pull me under too. He was a ghost living in our house. A ghost with a job and a car and a recliner that he rarely got out of. But a ghost nonetheless. And we learned to treat him like one. We stopped asking him to play. Stopped telling him about our days. We tiptoed around his moods like they were landmines. We left him alone, not because we didn't care, but because we didn't know what else to do. Mom kept up appearances. Smiles at church. Cookies for the neighbors. But I heard her crying once, in the kitchen, after the dishwasher overflowed, and he didn't even get up from the couch. She didn't sob. She just sagged, like something inside her had finally gone out. I wrote about that too. Mommy cries like she's trying not to. I think I do too. The truth is, I became a different child during those years. Quieter. More agreeable. I got good at reading the temperature of a room. At anticipating when someone was about to unravel. That's what kids like me do. We become mirrors. Reflecting everything, but never adding our own light. I think it took me until now reading this, remembering this, to realize that I spent my entire adolescence mourning a man who hadn't died. I grieved in silence. For years. And nobody noticed. Because he was still there, technically. His boots were by the door. His razor in the bathroom. His name still on the birthday cards. But the man himself, the father who used to carry me on his shoulders, who danced with me in the kitchen, who made up bedtime stories about talking trees and stubborn moons, that man was gone. And no one held a funeral. No one said he wouldn't be coming back. We just kept living in the same house with his shell. And I kept writing it down in a diary I forgot existed, because some part of me needed to tell the truth somewhere, even if it was just to a page. Even now, flipping through these entries, it feels like conjuring ghosts. Paper ghosts. Ones I wrote into existence. Ones that never left. They've just been waiting. And now that I've found them again, I don't think they'll let me pretend anymore. There's a language we develop in families like mine. Not made of words, exactly. More like gestures. Avoidance. Timing. We knew when to speak and when to disappear. We knew that he's just tired meant don't ask questions. That give your father a minute meant it's not safe right now. That we'll talk about it later meant we never will. We didn't say things out loud. Not the real things. Not I'm scared. Not I miss him. Not I think he's not okay. Not even I love you, unless it was followed by, too, now go brush your teeth. It's strange how silence can fill a house. How you learn to move around it, as if it has mass. We weren't screaming. We weren't violent. We were just quiet, tense, pretending. And I learned how to speak that silence fluently. I learned not to cry when he didn't say goodnight. I learned to laugh a little louder when his mood soured. I learned to protect Mom with jokes and distractions and being the easy one. There's a page in the diary, one of the last full ones before the entries start tapering off. I was 10. I heard Daddy yelling from the basement. Mom was trying to make him come upstairs. She told me to stay in my room. So I did. But I wrote this down, just in case I forget it happened. That last line cracked something in me. Just in case I forget it happened. And I did. I really did. Not entirely. There was always a vague discomfort attached to that house, that staircase, the sound of the basement door creaking. But the memory itself? The details? Gone. Because my brain learned, early on, what to keep and what to bury. It knew that loving him was easier when the sharp edges were blunted. It knew I couldn't carry the weight of both his sadness and mine. So, it hid things for me. But that little girl, she remembered. She wrote it down. For me. I keep thinking about that moment. How scared she must have been. How small. Alone in her room. Hearing her parents fight behind closed doors. Not knowing if she was allowed to be afraid. Not knowing who to go to. So she picked up a pen. That's what she had. She couldn't ask her mother, who was already carrying more than she could hold. She couldn't ask her father, who had disappeared behind a wall of blank stares and beer cans. She couldn't ask her friends, who still had dads that laughed and played tag and sat at the dinner table. So she wrote it down. Because even at 10, she understood something I'm only now beginning to fully grasp. Silence is a kind of violence. And in that house, silence was survival. I wonder how many things I learned not to say out loud. Like how I envied my friends who were scared of their dads because they were strict, not broken. Or how I used to stand in the hallway and whisper, "Are you okay?" to the closed garage door. Or how I stopped believing in Santa the year I stopped believing my dad could come back from wherever he went. None of that was ever spoken. It was felt, endured, swallowed. I became someone else during those years. Smiling, composed, reliable. The kind of girl who doesn't cause trouble. The kind of woman who still apologizes when someone bumps into her. Who still feels guilty for things she didn't do. Who still believes, deep down, that if she's just good enough, maybe the people she loves won't leave her, not physically, but emotionally. I've spent most of my life trying to be easy to love, because I was once a child who learned that love can vanish quietly, and no one will talk about it. There's a kind of forgetting that feels like betrayal. Not of someone else. Of yourself. A memory rises like a wave you didn't see coming, and when it hits, you realize you've been lying to yourself for years. Not because you wanted to, but because it was the only way to keep standing. This one came back while I was brushing my teeth. Out of nowhere. No warning. Just a flash. Me on the school bus, pressed to the window, waving. I was in 4th grade. Maybe younger. I used to wave at my dad every morning before we pulled away from the curb. He'd stand at the edge of the driveway, in his bathrobe, holding a mug. Sometimes he'd salute. Sometimes he'd dance. Once, he held up a sign that said, "Kick Monday's butt." It was our thing. And then one day, he wasn't there. No warning. No explanation. The bus turned the corner, and the driveway was empty. I remember squinting through the window, thinking maybe he was late. Maybe he was inside, grabbing his coffee. Maybe he forgot. The next day, he wasn't there either. Or the next. Or the next. And eventually, I stopped looking. That morning lived in me like a bruise I couldn't find until I pressed hard enough. Because now I remember what hurt most. Not that he wasn't standing there, but that he didn't wave back. I saw him. In the window. He looked out at me, blank face, unmoving, and then walked away. And I pretended I didn't see it, because it was easier to believe he hadn't seen me, that something had gotten in his eye, that the glass was too dirty, that the light was wrong. But the truth was it wasn't his eyes that failed. It was the light inside them. There's a photo of us from that year. I found it in a drawer a few weeks ago. I'm wearing a backpack almost as big as my body. He's kneeling next to me, his arm around my shoulder. We're both smiling. But when I really looked at it, I saw it. He was smiling with his mouth, not his eyes. They were empty. Not sad. Not angry. Just gone. I used to stare at that photo when I was little, because it felt like proof. Proof that he loved me. Proof that he was there. But now I know what I was really doing. I was trying to find him in that picture. The man who used to tickle me until I hiccuped. Who made fart noises in the grocery store to make me laugh. Who told me I was magic. And he wasn't there. Not really. The light had left. I don't know when it started. Maybe long before I was old enough to notice. Maybe he fought it for years before it finally swallowed him whole. I used to think depression looked like crying in the dark. But my father didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just faded. He showed up less and less. First at the table, then at the door, then in his own face. Until eventually, all that was left was the shell. A man who stared through windows. Who forgot to wave. Who forgot how to smile with his eyes. And I adapted. I stopped expecting too much. Stopped hoping for the old dad to come back. Stopped believing in the version of him I used to draw in crayon, arms wide, eyes bright, sun behind him. I stopped waving. Not because I didn't love him, but because it hurt too much to be invisible. And now, all these years later, I'm trying to find that little girl again. The one with her hand pressed to the bus window. The one who still believed a wave could bring someone back. It didn't hit me all at once. Not when I read the diary. Not even when the memories came flooding back. It was slower than that. More terrifying than that. It was when I caught myself staring at the wall. Just staring. No thoughts. No movement. No reason. And it wasn't the first time. I'd been doing it for weeks, maybe months, without noticing. Just slipping out of myself for a few seconds at a time, maybe longer. Coming back with a tight chest, shallow breath, no idea where I'd just been. And the worst part? It felt familiar. Like something I'd seen before. Because I had. That's how he used to sit. At the table. In the garage. In the car. Staring. Still. Somewhere else. And now it was in me. I don't know how to explain the fear of realizing you're becoming the person who broke you. It's like your whole body revolts against itself. You want to run. But from what? You want to scream. But there's no one to blame. You want to fix it. But you don't know where the crack began. I started thinking about all the ways I've been trying to outrun him. How I laugh a little too loudly when I'm uncomfortable. How I panic when someone gets quiet. How I apologize when I need something, just like my mother used to. How I make people feel safe, because deep down I never did. And underneath it all, this quiet truth that's been building. He left something behind in me. Not his temper. Not his sadness. His absence. The space he carved out when he disappeared, day by day. The shape of his silence. The cold air that followed him from room to room. The ache of wanting something warm and steady and whole, and getting nothing back. It became part of me. And no one tells you what to do with that. No one teaches you how to fill that kind of void. You can build a life around it, sure. You can build a career, a relationship, even a version of yourself that looks functional on the outside. But the emptiness stays. Some days, I catch myself holding my breath in the shower. Like if I can just be quiet enough, still enough, maybe I'll hear something from the other side of it. Some days, I hear my voice talking to a friend or a partner, and I realize I'm using his words. His tone. That cold finality he mastered so well. And it terrifies me. Because I hated it. And now I do it. Because it's what I was given. That's the cruelest part of this kind of grief, the inheritance. The way silence begets silence. The way absence teaches absence. The way you become fluent in detachment because you had no choice but to learn it young. I don't want to be like him. But I don't know who I am without that shadow. There's no real ending to this realization. No breakthrough. No neat little bow. Just the quiet understanding that my father's pain didn't stop with him. It grew legs. It learned my name. It curled up inside me when I was small and patient and didn't know better. And now, I carry it, not like a scar, like a shape. A shape he left in me. There weren't many entries after that year. The handwriting in the diary gets sparser. The ink changes from glittery pink to black ballpoint. The language shifts too, less magic, more math. More facts. Fewer feelings. By the time I turned 12, I'd stopped writing altogether. It wasn't a conscious decision. I didn't stand over the book and say enough. But the silence had trained me well by then. It had taught me what to keep to myself. What not to ask. What it meant to grow up in a house full of unsaid things. But last night, after all the pages I'd read, after all the memories I'd dragged from the attic of my mind, I found one more entry. The last page. I don't remember writing it, but it's mine. I know by the slant of the letters, by the way the Y in Daddy curls like a question mark. It was written in pencil. No date. It says, I hope Daddy comes back from the sad. That's it. No explanation. No story. Just a wish. I must have known, even then, that I couldn't fix him. That no amount of good grades or clean rooms or cheerful drawings on the fridge could reach wherever he'd gone. But I still hoped. God, I hoped. And I didn't even know what I was hoping for, really. Not the man he became. Not the husk who lived in that chair and spoke in half sentences. But the one from the home videos. The one who threw me in the air at the beach. The one who bought me purple light-up sneakers because I said they made me run faster. I wanted that man to come back. From wherever the sadness had buried him. But he never did. Not really. He's still alive. Still lives a town over. Still checks in on holidays with awkward texts like Happy Turkey Day. We talk, occasionally. Small talk. Weather. Work. Nothing that touches the core. But now, with the diary beside me, this strange time capsule of grief and hope, I wonder if that's enough. If it ever was. I've spent most of my life building a dam around that little girl who wrote, "I hope Daddy comes back from the sad." I buried her voice beneath years of therapy speak and measured adult logic. I told myself that he did the best he could. That he was human. That he didn't mean to vanish. And maybe all of that is true. But she still lives in me. The girl who waited by the window. Who waved at the man in the driveway. Who left cookies on the counter untouched. Who watched the light go out in someone she loved and couldn't do a thing about it. And now, maybe, it's time I write her back. So, I pick up the pen. The same pen I used to underline the last page. And I write. I'm going to visit him tomorrow. I don't know what I'll say. But I think I'm ready to stop pretending I wasn't hurt. I think I'm ready to be real. Not for him. For me. I close the diary. Not like an ending. Like a beginning. Because grief doesn't always come when someone dies. Sometimes it lives with you. Grows with you. Becomes a shape inside you. But maybe if you face it, really face it, it can become something else. Not closure, but connection. Even if it's just a conversation. Even if it's just a wave. Even if it's just a door that opens again.